Welcome to another edition of the Animal Rights Show.
It's those animal rights people again.
Banging on about animal rights.
Yeah. We ought to talk about something else, didn't we, really? Let's face it.
Should we talk about animal welfare this week?
Yeah, no, we've covered that. We've covered animal rights. We could just tell a few. I got a good joke. Why did the vegan cross the road? No? To visit her chicken friend, of course.
Of course.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like their chicken friend versus their chicken. Remove that ownership implication.
Indeed, yes. I was thinking, Jeremy Hess is on the call. I better be careful what I say.
I heard another version. I heard another version of that joke.
Oh, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, why did the vegan cross the road? To tell you they were vegan.
Well, say the same thing about non-vegans. Why did the non-vegan cross the road? To tell you that someone's talking about veganism. I mean, it goes both ways.
No, to get away from the vegans, I
think. If you're just joining us, if you don't know the drill, let us know you're here in the comments. Hello, Bernie, Grumpy Vegan Granddad, UK Vegan Family, Laura, Elliot. Yeah, we're here to talk about this year because I think it's been a strange one. I know it has for the five of us, and I'm guessing a lot of those who are joining us can probably say the same thing. So really the topic is just to kind of take a bit of a check to see what this year has been for everyone, both at a big picture and an individual level, and then really just kind of where do we go from here? I mean...
Yeah, what you've been doing during the lockdown and what's your plans for after? Look at that. Grumpy Vegan Granddad, don't give up on your day job. I'm hurt. I've got to...
What about when he finds out your day job's a comedian?
Grumpy Vegan Granddad, you have no idea.
What we have to suffer. You only get small doses of it on the live streams. You should see our planning meetings. Welcome, Anne and Ronnie. Ronnie's just giving you a bit of a warning there, Roger. No rude language.
Oh, yes.
I bet Ronnie was chuckling to that joke, though, with his infectious laugh.
So, yeah, I think, Roger, you had a bit of a story with how you've been taking to the streets through the lockdown. Do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, I could do, in the sense that, there's a really good franchise, a wildlife cheese franchise in Ireland called Art of Zen. And they're really wonderful people. And we often meet them at the Dublin Veg Fest and stuff, and the Cork Veg Fest. And they always give us kind of truckloads of samples to give out. And so for, I think about the last 5 years, we've been giving samples of the wildlife. And it's only part of what we do. But it's interesting because about a year in, I went to a health food shop in Grafton Street in Dublin, which is just up the road from where we from where we do the outreach. And I asked them, have you seen an increase in sales of plant-based cheese? And they said, yeah, particularly Violife. So I think that we were kind of having an effect back then. I think it's all kind of piled in since then. But I mean, I think in a sense, we were the only ones kind of sampling in those days. So every now and again, if they get some almost end of run, when it's getting close, a few weeks from their sell by date or use by date, they let us know, and we go and get a van load of it and just give it out to the people. I particularly personally like the grated one, because you can throw them at people. This is serious, because people are very. They're very skeptical. They come up and you go, would you like some vegan cheese? And they say, how much is it? And you say, it's vegan. And they say, how much does it cost? And so they will try a little square, and then they'll walk away from you whilst they're chewing it. And then you say, did you like it? And they go, yeah, it's really nice. And so you throw them a packet.
It's a new form of outreach, throwing cheese throwing.
You can't do that for health and safety reasons. You can zip their head off, like. So anyway, during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to go back out, and so we recruited Elvis to help us give out the cheese. So we've got something like a 40-second video of that, and so we're going to play that, I think.
And just real quickly to those who have joined, welcome Deb, Kristen, Michael, Michelle, and yeah, let's see how Elvis does vegan street outreach.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jennifer, Elvis is gone. Come back, Elvis, we need you.
Good to see they gave him a day off from the chip shop to come and do your vegan outreach.
I reckon that's what it must have been, we must have given him a day off. But it was really interesting.
My mom just picked up on, is there an Elvis song, Don't Be Cruel? Should the Animal Rights Show unpack that one?
Yeah.
Should we be talking about cruelty, Roger?
Yeah, he's got another one called Have Mercy, I think. But but the interesting thing about that day is that Elvis came up with the idea of all the stationary traffic was actually queuing up for the lights. So whenever they did that, he would rush over and start giving people the plant-based cheese into their cars. And then when he was singing his song, in between that, he was going to go, come and get your cheese, and this kind of stuff. So it was really good. And a taxi stopped, and this the driver kind of beckoned us over, and he wanted some cheese because one of his family members had recently gone vegan. And then of all the things, a police car stopped, they wanted some cheese, and then a bus,
wow,
a bus full of passengers stopped, and the driver opened his door and beckoned us over. He wanted some cheese as well. So it's always, we know the problems of basing outreach around free samples and everything, but it is quite a good way of doing it too, in the sense that it does bring people over. And so long as you then talk about the issue, then I think it's fine to do it myself.
Did you have any people that came back after trying the vegan cheese to have a conversation?
Yeah, it's interesting. We often get that. We get a lot of vegetarians asking about the cheese, and the weird thing about that is one of the things they regularly say, this is the vegetarians, is that, oh, I've never seen any vegan cheese. And another problem is the long-term vegetarians have tried plant-based cheese in the past, and they didn't like it, and so they kind of think that it's not really, as it were, improved. So we've got to try to convince them to try it again. And what it means in terms of retail, like supermarkets, they keep changing things around, rearranging everything. And the reason for that is that, and this is what we worked out about the vegetarians, people go in and they go straight to the product that they know, and they pick it off the shelf. And so literally these vegetarians have been, as in walking past the vegan cheese and never seen it, never twigged that it was completely plant-based. And so they often claim that they've never seen vegan cheese, even though we know that they shop in places that's got 6 or 7 varieties. So it's really, people are creatures of habit when it comes to consuming products. If you've got a favorite, you go for it, a particular brand.
Looks like Ronnie's got a question for you, Roger.
Oh, no.
Were you handing out blue soy cheese?
I'm not even going to answer that. It's so bad. Come on, Ronnie, you can do better than that, mate. What's the matter with you? Blue soy cheese.
I was watching your video, Roger, and I was thinking of other videos you've shared in the past. And in this one, the street seems almost deserted in comparison to the older, pre-COVID videos. So that's one more reason activist groups don't have organized that many outreach events. Also, yeah. in some other countries, they could not. It was not allowed to. I know here for a while it was not.
Yeah, well, the reason for the shortage of people, as it were, is that normally we're in Dublin city centre, but we'd gone out to one of the suburbs to a shopping centre. we had to go to where Elvis was rather than the other way around. But also we didn't think we were going to get away with it, and so we actually just set it up from outside of we could actually see an activist house, and so we thought that we were going to get kicked off the street, within 10 minutes. But we were allowed to stay, so it wasn't a problem. And because there was a lot of thing about we're not going to get away with this in terms of the guards, the police. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the other problem that there's a lot less footfall going on, and also because of COVID and stuff, a lot of people are a bit more reluctant to come up. And another story about a vegetarian. On that day, they came up and this guy goes, he's been a long-term vegetarian, you could tell, and he said, "Are you sure this is 100% vegetarian?" And we were going, well, it's better than that. It's vegan, But I'm not quite sure if it registered, but he wanted reassurance that the cheese was vegetarian. And so I suppose he was thinking about rennet, which you don't hear about anymore. There's no discussion in the vegan community about rennet. There's no need to be. It used to be a big conversation all the time.
What's my experience from this COVID period is that many groups had to be more creative and disguise their outreach event as something else, or use single issue campaigns. We had 2 campaigns for against fair subsidies, and that we doubled as outreach events too, because we're allowed to protest, but we're not allowed to organize an event. And also we had the sitting disguised, an outreach event disguised as a sit-in. The outreacher mingled with the crowd, and police could not tell who is who. And I've seen many groups doing stuff like that because they cannot do their normal outreach events. And obviously, many activists turn to other kinds of activism that we could mention, like one can do by themselves. I know that Ronnie Lee has talked a lot about leafletting and door dropping, which is an excellent idea during.
And also paid advertising on social media. I know in addition to these live streams, which I think it's been an opportunity to kind of take a step back and kind of, look at the theory a bit more and just kind of connect with the virtual community while we've kind of lost touch potentially with the local face-to-face community. But yeah, really just promoting things on social media, I think, is a great way. I was just pondering, actually, before we got started, while there's more vegans on social media, most likely sharing, commenting, and the rest, I wonder if there's just more people in general on social media. So I wonder if we just have more competition, too. So it's not exactly like we're able to necessarily, overwhelm social media, since now all of us have maybe shifted from the street to online a bit, although obviously there's multiple forms of activism, not just on the street.
See, hey, Ronnie, is it true that you'll get a retainer every time you mention door dropping? Because I think that you must do. Hello, Jennifer. Yeah, I've already told them about the bus, and
yeah, it sounds cool.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a form of a street performance, isn't it, with the Elvis factor?
Yeah, well, I mean, it really helped because it kind of lightened the mood, and that's often what samples do in a sense, because I don't know, I think some people might just come up in a more kind of confrontational thing. The food almost seems to dilute that a little bit. Not sure what I'm saying there.
A couple of little things regarding sort of social media, and I think Jeremy and Roger, didn't you have a Hess and Yates debate about social media and talking about whether we're in the bubble? Was that one of your debates a few weeks ago? Because of course it does raise the question, when we're posting, when we're promoting or sharing content on social media, do we stay in a vegan bubble in that our friends are seeing it? Likely the people who usually interact or comment or have, give us a like or something like that will be the people who see our next post. I think Facebook very much try to, with their algorithms, keep it within, user friendly, like what's the user experience? What do these users want to see? So they will share posts that in the kind of vein that they've already commented and liked and things like that. So I think there is that risk, of course, of staying within the bubble. And I think it's important that the more engagement you get, obviously, the better. If people see other vegan and animal rights posts that they feel aligned with, that, you know, do comment, do engage, because that then increases the traction of those posts as well. And also, I think if you are sharing a post, and I think, Ronnie, you might know a bit more, because I know Ronnie's done quite a lot of looking into social media, posting and things like that. When you're sharing something, I think it's actually, again, you get more traction if you share, but you actually create your own post when you share. So you don't just share it, you actually write a post that comes from you with the attachment kind of thing. I think, again, I think you get more traction from particularly from Facebook for that. Ronnie, do you
That's
know
my
anything about that?
Well, that's actually a really interesting issue. I know it crops up in Ireland all the time, in the sense that organisers are often they can't really understand why the people who turn up at their events, they don't share them, and if they do, they share them once on their own wall, as it were, and that's their share done. Whereas, you know, everybody's probably going to be, you know, part and parcel of lots of different groups. So I don't know whether a lot of people don't realize that you can share things in multiple groups, so long as you don't overdo it and get banned. But it also, the thing that I always remind people about the internet is that it's a 24/7 thing. So you can post the same thing twice in the same group anyway. Just give it a few hours, because there's going to be a brand new audience then. You know, because people, I mean, this is exactly, if you just think about advertising, you know, how many times you turn on the radio or the TV and you see the same adverts over and over and over again, is because repetition is key to advertising. So just sharing things once is not really going to cut it, really.
Yeah, and Ronnie's just reiterating your point, Wendy, that when you well, there's lots of nuances I think we could discuss with social media. But yeah, just talking about, because there's obviously Facebook and Google are competitors, so they try to limit cross-platform traffic. So to Ronnie's point, rather than linking to a YouTube video, actually doing an original video on Facebook. But yeah, the paid advertising Ronnie does, it seems like a good way to kind of break out of the vegan bubble. I mean, the way I do that is just hopefully I get enough momentum within the vegan circles that it goes beyond that. Although I think it's good to reiterate an animal-centric message within the vegan bubble too, because I think that's something I personally think we could use more of.
And I know Ronnie's... sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's all right.
I was just going to say, I know Ronnie's involved in creating a group for UK and Ireland-based activists who want to start their own activism or local grassroots groups. And I know I've joined that, so that's helped myself and a few others local to me, because we took the time to start our own local grassroots group. We're based in Surrey, called the Surrey Animal Liberation Alliance. So we've taken time to just reflect on what type of activism we want to do, create a website, and create materials in preparation for going out on the streets to engage in outreach and possible future kind of single issue abolitionist pressure campaigns as well. So thank you to Ronnie for allowing us in the group and learning.
What's the name of the group?
Salah.
The one that you're talking about that Ronnie does, that kind of supports?
I believe, I'm just going to check on...
Animal Liberation Coalition, isn't it, of Britain and Ireland, is it?
Yes, that's it,
Anyway.
Animal Liberation Coalition, yeah.
Maybe we can link that at some point so others can look that up, because it is, I mean, because the other thing, there has been some groups, like, you've got all these layers, you've got the movement as a whole, then you've got groups, and then you've got individuals trying to find our way through this thing, because, you know, the movement's got enough challenges as it is, and this pandemic has thrown us a real curveball. I mean, I think if we do focus in on street outreach, I know, at least from what I've seen, there's been a significant drop-off, which I think for good reason. But yeah, it's all of a sudden, you know, who knows what the new normal will be. You know, maybe that's not the best terminology to use, but, you know, when we return back to normal, how many people are going to come back out on the streets? I think that's a real issue for us to consider, and
Yeah,
you know, how to support our fellow advocates to do that.
Yeah, you were fearful of that, weren't you, Jeremy? That people who were, as it were, you know, fairly active before the pandemic probably might not come back. And
burnout's always a risk, isn't it? And we've had one of the larger groups that's had a lot of issues that have been kind of smokescreen during the pandemic, I think, and we haven't really seen the full extent. But once, you know, things do return to normal, speaking about the elephant in the room, I think a lot of people have revisited their relationship with Anonymous for the Voiceless. So I think whether or not they choose to, whether those events are still being set up and not, I mean, that again could be a whole topic of another live stream. But I think just in general, there's a lot of just stuff happening underneath the surface. And until we kind of, return to things, it's going to be hard to know actually how much we've been hurt as a movement and how we can get things going again, at least at a street level. But yeah, I mean, there's social media, there's sanctuaries who haven't been able to hold events. I mean, there's a whole slew of different things. So if you are joining, I mean, I think Deb's mentioned the rodeo that's been canceled because of COVID. So there's some, hopefully that's a sustained cancellation. I don't know if that's a one-off or if that's a temporary thing. Yeah, I feel a bit naive even knowing that there's rodeos in Arizona. Arizona kind of shocks me, but but really it's just a matter of, if you've had these experiences this year, like, let us know. Like, have you found 2020? Have you managed to keep your animal advocacy going just in different ways, or have you really felt like it's been a brick wall a bit, and that you've been haven't been able to do the things that you normally do? That's what I'm curious about. How do we feel as a team? I feel like I've had to shift around a lot.
Well, I mean, this show is a product of the pandemic in a way, isn't it? But also,
you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I wasn't making a comment on that level whatsoever, actually, Mr. Hess.
You're Switzerland. You're neutral.
I am, yeah. I'll tell you one thing which is interesting in this conversation is I think a lot of people are expecting a really severe third wave, in the end of January because of what's going to be going on around the Christmas time. Now, obviously, the news about the vaccine is interesting in that light. Then, if something goes wrong with any of the vaccines, we're going to, things are going to be really interesting in the sense that the only option then it would be to really enforce another severe lockdown, which they'd be doing all over the place. Going back to Nella's point, it seems that different countries are responding to protest or events in different ways. It seems to be fairly loose in Ireland and probably in Britain.
Anne's got a great point around reaching out to groups that aren't necessarily vegan in nature. Just talking about the recent Greenpeace film about industrial meat shared to the local litter picking group, because you get a whole cross section of society and able to talk about why is soy being grown. It's not being grown just for all the vegans. It's being grown to feed to other animals, and obviously has a massive impact on the environment, and kind of building awareness around some of those things. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to just vegan members. I don't know if anybody else either listening or here live has had much experience through comment sections of non-vegan posts. I know I've had a little bit of a dabble on TikTok and Reddit as well. I think have been both quite good for getting straight into non-vegan audiences. Obviously through text-based comment section you can only do so much, but I think it is a good way to kind of start planting those little seeds, and especially when we're at home and can't do outreach, because I know I've been missing it. I think a few of us feel that way.
And what's TikTok like? Because I thought it was something that people mimed to music and it was really for kids. Has it changed recently then?
Well, I mean, there's a few different things you can do, I think, with it. I know I mostly follow animal advocates, so when they post something, I kind of just, and I haven't been very regular about this, but if they post something, I just have a skim through the comments, and if people have said a bunch of stuff that's non-vegan beliefs, just dropping a quick comment to kind of share the opposing angle. Probably I like the hit and run approach. I mean, I'm not going to spend my whole day in those comment sections. I don't think it'd be good for my mental health. But yeah, I think there is good content on there. It's not there's obviously a whole slew of things on there, but there is content you can pick out where those discussions are being had, to your point.
Well, this issue of hit and run is interesting because presumably if you stay in that non-vegan place, then the educational content of what you've got to say is more important than, as it were, retreating into the vegan bubble. So it would be important to stay, really, wouldn't it? Rather than just make a comment and leave.
I guess the point being that people aren't necessarily the most open-minded. This does go back to Wendy's point, the chat we had a while ago. I mean, how long do we want to thrash it out, with all these back and forths in the comments, or just literally, you know, a quick back and forth. And once our point's been made, I think we've probably all seen in those comment threads that just go on a bit too long.
I think it does raise a point as well, generally, in that, and I think that's something that the lockdown situations and COVID and everything has given people a chance to actually assess what kind of activism they want to do and where best to spend their time and energy. So, for example, if, you know, what kind of threads, what kind of comments are you going to be posting? Is it worth your time and energy? Or are you just getting caught up in toxic conversations? You know, so it's worth really looking at that. And also, you know, looking at, are you doing activism just for the sake of doing something? So even just looking at social media posts, what kind of posts are you posting? Are you just sharing everything because it relates to animal and other animal issues in some way? So, for example, I saw something today, and it's something that I see a lot, is the sharing of posts that relate to welfare, or it might just be like factory farming. Let's ban factory farming. Let's end the testing of primates in laboratories, things like this. So they're very much single issue, but and I sort of, I don't have all the answers to this. This is something I'm really curious about as well, is what do we actually share? Is it important that we actually look at the content of what we're sharing as well? And are we actually aligned with that? Is that the message that we want to be passing on to others, rather than just sharing everything and anything for the sake of doing something, like activism for activism's sake? And I think that can be true of outreach as well. Like, I know I find myself questioning and thinking more critically of the events that I now go to. Am I aligned with those organizations? Am I aligned with the message, or, you know, the kind of outreach that you're doing? And yeah, am I giving an animal rights message and anti-speciesist message in these events? And I think that's something that's really important that we assess as well, is be mindful of where we're putting our time and energy.
Sounds like developing a bit of a critical nous and thinking tactically more about how to best lend your efforts to the activism. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I think the interesting thing about that is that if you do say, okay, I'm going to be very selective about what I put out and make sure it's in alignment with my own position, rather than just, you know, sharing everything that comes along almost. That's going to cut down on the amount of things that you're going to be doing, and in some strange way that actually might help on social media, because I think there is some evidence that if you bombard non-vegans on social media, they tend to start to unfollow you and stuff. It's something that we've talked about before when we've talked about the vegan bubble. I've noticed that some activists are very reluctant to not admit, but to kind of acknowledge that one exists. And they might say things like, oh, well, I've got lots of non-vegan friends on Facebook, but I'm not quite sure whether anybody's got I mean, I don't even know, technically wise, you know, Jeremy might know this, whether you can tell if somebody's unfollowed you, because that could well be what's going on. And so you might not think you're in a vegan bubble, but you've created it by the actual frequency of posting. That's what I'm trying to say, in the sense, so it would maybe be beneficial to just pick and choose the stuff that you really agree with, and cut down on the actual volume of traffic, if you like. That could help, couldn't it?
I think it also has to do with the content we share and the language we use, because with everyone feeling pressed right now, posting stuff only to vent or using aggressive language towards non-vegans, it's not going to help us break the bubble.
That's kind of to Vegan Potterhead's comment, how to basically navigate misanthropy, because that's always been a challenge within the movement, hasn't it? So yeah, it's really just it's going to be accentuated, I think. You know, if we go down the whole line of non-vegans causing the pandemic, and obviously on top of all the other stuff, it is something to address. Anybody have any I don't know if magic bullets is very vegan, but a magic bullet for how to respond to misanthropy within the movement?
That's a tough one. It's a tough one, but I think for me, one of the things that I really notice is if you spend time around people who are speaking in those terms, who are, you know, oh, I despise humans, and humans are the, you know, and trust me, we've all had those thoughts and feelings, I'm sure. I know I have. and I'm sure I'm not alone here, and definitely through people watching, but I don't think it's helpful or healthful as either to us, because I think if we have misanthropic feelings and views that we live with on a daily basis, that's not good for our own health and well-being, and our own outlook on life, and our own ability and capacity to be great advocates. So I think it's important that we don't get sucked down into that misanthropy too much. But and I think the environment that you put yourself in, if you're with people who are talking in those terms, using that language and having those views, we're very susceptible to our environment, very highly influenced by that. And I think we can find ourselves just getting drawn into it. So I think it's really important to be mindful of where you are spending your time, who are you spending your time with, are they speaking that type of language, and you know, just discussing those things a lot, you know, and even going to protests and things like that. I think sometimes you can get caught up in that kind of language. So maybe limiting how much you're in those environments might be a good one.
I think I would agree with everything you said, Wendy. And I think that something that I've observed recently amongst some individuals in the movement is that if you kind of become more misanthropic, you're more likely, from my observations, is to become more dismissive and less empathic of humans who are oppressed in different ways, you know. So that is a problem in itself. I think it can kind of create this myopic view of just caring about other animals and not showing empathy to other humans, which is a problem in itself. And yeah, and just can be quite isolating and counterproductive to what we stand for. If we, you know, we're going to call ourselves an inclusive, anti-oppression justice movement.
And also, if I can just say again, actually, something, and I'm sure Roger can speak to this quite a lot as a sociologist, is that we have to remember that as much as we despise the things that are going on, and it is just beyond what we can imagine, we have to remember that there are systems in place, that people are socialized into the systems, and that it's not just that everyone is evil and, you know, that everyone is just an evil piece of shit doing all this stuff to other animals. We are in systems that are heavily ingrained, we're heavily conditioned. And I think coming back to that really helps me, for one, is like, remind yourself, you know, hate the sin, not the sinner, and remind yourself that we are just stuck in these very powerful systems of oppression.
Very few of us were raised vegan, were we? So it's good to remember that. And here Jennifer's pointing out art and maybe music is another example of that. Maybe songwriting, poetry writing. There's lots of things that, you know, hopefully we found our way to during the pandemic. That maybe we, you know, if we're focusing on the street stuff, for instance, now that we can't do that, hopefully we can focus on the things that we can do. Because I think we've got a wee while longer to go with this thing. So just really, you know, whether it's reading animal rights theory, there's a lot we can still do. It's just really finding ways as individuals to keep the momentum going. I think Wendy's point around surrounding ourselves with, you know, kind of positive people. You know, I'm sure we all have our negative moments, but
there seems to be a lot of people turning to art, and I think that does tend to be the case. You know, Jennifer's got Jennifer Faust art, and I think there's an album of vegan memes and pictures and paintings on there. I think art is it's a very kind of a human way of expressing things, and it's always been a kind of means of getting the message out, you know. And so I've noticed that there's kind of an increase in vegan art at the moment.
Well, into our discussion, images are processed by the human mind quicker than words. So and they stick with you longer, I think. You know, they're more likely to get stored into long-term memory. So there's that effect. Dev's got a good point about environmental groups. I mean, I haven't necessarily specifically targeted them, although I know there's a lot of groups that are both animal rights and environmentalism. So it's kind of on the tin. So animal rights and, you know, animal-centric content is already kind of welcomed there. But yeah, I think it's good to experiment with some of this stuff. It sounds like Ronnie's had some success with some of the local environmental groups, and just, you know, being mindful not to, building on Ronnie's point further, to not post too frequently. And also, Ronnie mentions the graphic graphic content thing, because I appreciate some graphic stuff has been shared around and does well on social media, but I do think it's running a risk that we get unfollowed. And I personally found my content is more likely to be shared if it's that the non-graphic nature and draws people in more to their individuality, you know, individuals on Sanctuary and so forth. Which, yeah.
And that, and actually mentioning sanctuaries there, Jeremy, as well, that's another thing, of course, that's really practical that people can do is to help sanctuaries. And we had a whole show on sanctuaries last week, but I think getting involved in fundraising, whether it's using your birthday as a Facebook fundraiser, or, you know, having the donations from relatives and friends for your birthday, for Christmas or whatever, instead of actual gifts, you know, donations to the sanctuaries, buying the bales of hay, or you know, supplying food for the other animals. And even in the pandemic, even in lockdown times, you can even get involved physically, because obviously a lot of the times at the sanctuaries, you're very much in open spaces. They always need help with clearing up the poo from the fields, or even maintenance work, things like that. You can get involved in many different ways, actually physically there. And of course, there aren't often issues of social distance. It obviously depends on the sanctuary and whether they want you there, but it's worth bearing in mind that that's something very practical you can do.
Yeah, Grumpy Vegan Grandad did a live stream about sanctuaries just before early today, so that will be online now, which was a interesting discussion about, you know, the ins and outs of the functionality of them, you know, the support for them, and all that. You know, where do sanctuaries fit into the vegan world kind of issue, you know? So that was quite interesting, because, you know, like in our discussion, you know, it's not as clear cut as you would like it to think. You know, everyone wants to be, you know, help you know, sanctuaries to care for the other animals who are there, but it's not necessarily as clear cut as that, unfortunately.
So how do we feel as individuals? Do we feel like we've been able to keep our momentum going through this thing? I know I feel a bit disjointed without having events at Friend. You know, that's usually a big part of my time, both the actual supporting the physical events, but also the promotion side of things and the rest of it. Not doing street outreach. I can't remember the last time I did street outreach. I really miss that. I think it's a great time to test strategy, as well as I enjoy the challenge behind it. So I think I've lost momentum in some ways, but hopefully gained it in others. But yeah, it's hard to say what the future holds.
I feel kind of the same. I mean, I had the time to educate myself, and I'm thankful for that. But on the other hand, I feel that I need to do more practical things. And the question is, are we relying too much on internet for activism these days? And what if a large number of activists continue to do that after COVID, instead of doing actual things in the streets? That's what I'm thinking about very often. And I'm trying to look into other ways that I can do activism, even if the things with the pandemic don't ease like soon. And I was looking into the leafleting thing, or stickering, or postering, or I don't know, drawing. I'm not good at drawing, but there are people that are, obviously, with chalk, to find a way to go there and do something. I don't know how everyone is feeling about that.
Chalking would be a great one. I haven't actually done it, but that'd be a great thing to do during the pandemic, because you can just kind of, back to the term before, you know, kind of do a hit and run, but there's still people out walking around, because it's obviously a bit more difficult to do the actual outreach conversations.
And postering as well. Sometimes that's, if you've got a group of you, a small group of you, usually that's something late at night to just to kind of put a few posters around with, obviously, vegan friendly glue, of course. that can, you know, leave messages for people to just come across, similar to chalking, I guess.
Well, the issue about postering is the cost of the posters, isn't it? Because they don't last very long, do they? They get covered over. Yeah, so that would be an issue, I suppose.
Well, often the ones that you can actually print them off yourself. So there are just some really simple ones, just with simple vegan messages on, or animal rights messages, that you can just print off yourself, or if someone has a printer, just even on A4, simple A4, don't have to be fancy. I know there are some posters that are amazing and sort of great artwork and laminated or whatever, but I think you can do cheap ones as well just to put the message there.
But you can't get them wet though, can you? If you try to, to kind of, fly post them, they're going to get all smidged, aren't they? Smudged. They're going to get
smudged.
the wood.
They're
We're
going to
gonna have to Google that one.
They're going to get smudged, don't they?
I haven't had that experience. If you posted them on the back, if you put the glue on the back, I guess.
Don't want any smidging going on.
No smidging or smudging.
Or
smudging.
What? Anne's got a great point here. I mean, this kind of goes. I mean, we've kind of been talking about it, but the lack of human to human creation. I mean, one thing I know Roger says often is we are social creatures, and I think that's affected our interactions, obviously, with others in general, but as a microcosm of that, our animal advocacy. Because when we can't see someone face to face and create that connection, and also talking about the eating food together, so that kind of brings it back to your story earlier, Roger, with Elvis handing out the vegan cheese as a form of outreach. It is different. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how many people are actually starting to live vegan now versus before, if the numbers have dropped off or not. I mean, I don't think we'll maybe never have access to those numbers, but I suspect probably hasn't done brilliant things for the awareness building side of things.
I suppose in response to Anne's point, you could do sort of quite the same, but a cooking demo on social media, couldn't you, to people that were following you? I know that typically some of the influencers would do that, some of the plant-based influencers, but that could be an option for Anne and others who are wanting to share their recipes. So I'd certainly watch, and save it, and cook it later.
There you go, Anne. You've got your first cookery fan just right here. I'll join as well.
Yeah, this banner drop idea is interesting. There's often little walkways across motorways, very busy roads that can be used for that. I've always had this the thing, because there's an M50 that goes around Dublin. It'd be great to have a vegan slogan on every single bridge, as people drive, to actually have a day of it or something. That'd be really good. And yeah, there was a nationwide one. Didn't have a very good slogan, but it was quite effective, I suppose.
To your point, Tom, about the live cooking demos, I have a friend on YouTube, the Plant Life Canada, who does weekly cooking demos. I think that's a great way to pull people together. Just like we're doing now, this is software we're using, StreamYard. It's the free version is actually quite good and does what most people would need, and all of a sudden you're up and streaming. And just giving it a try, I think just putting ourselves, with all forms of animal advocacy, I think it's just good to put ourselves out there and try different things. Yeah. So we might find that we connect with new people that we wouldn't have otherwise. I think this shows an example of that, both with us, with each other, and, who's, watching now. Joe's just talking about we're trying to get out in Bristol doing street activism every 2 or 3 weeks. Good response with inflatable animals and chalking. I love the inflatable animals angle of things, because I think similar to what Roger's talking about the food, it kind of draws people in and automatically might kind of help with defenses. So I think that's so cool. I think obviously you've got the upfront cost, but once you can do it, it's hard not to see a giant inflatable chicken and get a bit of a chuckle and then hopefully a conversation out of it. Stickerism. I haven't done stickering myself. I've done more the chalking side of things, and even then it's been a while. I don't know if there's any. I think there's kind of different sides to it. Mm-hmm. I guess the reason I personally prefer more chalking is because it is more kind of immediately removable. A bit of rain and it washes away, so there's less kind of potential long-term ramifications that could be, I don't know, maybe we could unpack that from an optics perspective. But I think that I've had a lot of people have had a positive experience with it as well. I don't know if anybody on the team's done stickering.
I've done in the past. I used to put stickers in the supermarket on the products. Obviously, there is the issue of they're not selling the product. If they find the sticker, they are throwing it away. It doesn't happen here though. They're just removing the the sticker. But just to be safe, then I started putting the sticker on the supermarket shelves, like not on the products. So behind the products, actually, so people choosing this product could see it, or outside on buildings around the supermarket, outside butcher shops, restaurants.
Be interesting to know about the sales psychology to all that, actually, Nella, in the sense that they've got all those slogans about lung cancer and stuff on cigarette packets, and yet they still get sold, don't they?
Yes,
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see. Be actually very interesting to do a sociological study and actually have a bit of a focus group, to find out, because some people might just be a bit cheesed off, vegan cheesed off to see those stickers, and that might just make them, express anti-vegan sentiments. Whether that would result in anything is another matter, but they kind of might not help in a way. But then again, depending on the individuals, that could apply to everything. Some people will object to just about anything you do, so there's always that kind of problem no matter what you do. So that would apply to chalking as well. Some people call chalking vandalism, for example, right? So you in some senses you're a kind of you can never please everybody all the time kind of situation, and so there's always going to be some people who are going to respond to whatever you do negatively.
And Ronnie's just said an alternative to the stickering is the leaflet side of things. Then it's removable, I guess.
That'd be difficult to do, wouldn't it? Though, because you're not going to be able to kind of go through all of them and be putting them in. I used to know somebody who went on a paper round, and they were able to put leaflets in each paper, obviously at their leisure. But in terms of doing it in a shop, that would be much harder, I would think. I mean, it's actually easier. One thing that people used to do for years, but I think they've only just opened, certainly in Ireland, is put leaflets into books in libraries. So people would find them when they're going through the books.
Hopefully, already prepared to do some reading.
Yeah. You have to kind of convince society to start reading again before that one becomes thing. And also leaving them on public transport has always been a common one.
Oh, yes.
But again, they don't last very long. In the sense that as soon as you come to a terminus, then the staff will clear them up.
Yeah, and Anne's just pointed out around just the upskilling on videos. I have a messenger chat that has a number of vegan content creators in it. So we do have we swap ideas for that. So feel free to message me, just Jeremy Hess on Facebook, if you'd like to be added. But because I think to that point, I think when you kind of get creative with a couple different cameras going on, you can do some of those things that you're talking about Bosch doing. Because I think it's a lot of fun once we overcome the initial challenges. Can have a lot of try new things. Welcome Digital Bloodbath, and also something Bernie's mentioned here is that increasing the writing to people and organizations that are in some way connected to the exploitation of other species, and also making it artistic to increase the impact. So that goes back to our visuals and what we're talking about with Jennifer's artwork. I think that's great.
Actually, there's something. Sorry to interrupt, Jeremy. Sorry. Just going. In relation to that, there's a few cases recently that I can think of for one specific incident with foxes who were going to be killed on a golf course, and then another couple of incidents where pigeons were trapped in a Tesco's, I think, on Tesco's property, and another one on a housing association property where there was a kind of almost like mini pressure campaign from activists where activists were calling, emailing, and commenting on social media of the organizations to say, look, this is happening. We really want you to free these pigeons. We need you to sort the nets out because they're trapped and there are dead birds here. We need you to take the nets down. We need you to free the trapped birds and things like this. And then with the foxes, activists actually went to the site, but also other activists were constantly phoning the organization, commenting on their Facebook pages and sending emails, and eventually all of those particular incidents had a positive outcome for the other animals. So I think that remote kind of activism can be really powerful especially if it's a kind of pressure campaign.
Yeah, and that is Spiffy has just said there are great pressure campaigns for the abolition of the fur trade and fur farms being done in Scandinavia connected to the pandemic. So I mean that's really an interesting thing. I don't know. I think we're still kind of figuring our way out. I think COVID's obviously been hard on a lot of businesses, but obviously from our perspective, a lot of those involve animal use, and if almost can we build off of that momentum that slowed them down and kind of keep some of these things shut, and rather than just firing back up again. But we could we've had 3-hour discussions about whether fur bans compared to wider vegan messaging campaigning. So
well, I was just thinking, funny enough, that's the second time that Wendy has mentioned pressure campaigns. So you're either wanting to get on the right side of the cranky vegan, or you've got, or it's coming up as a future guest on Thrive vegan podcast or something.
Well, you never know.
Oh, yeah. I got you sussed.
Oh, Roger.
Yeah. I tell you what's an interesting one for the COVID thing, which in terms of social distance really works really well, is the idea of getting a trailer. You have to have a vehicle with a tow bar, but you get a trailer with these adverts on it. And it's something that we've been looking at in Ireland for a few years, really, because in the Dublin area, there's a lorry that goes around with massive adverts for the wax museum. It's even got speakers on it and stuff playing music. And we could have like a vegan version of that. And of course, all that would mean then you'd take your trailer into town and just drive around slowly all day, really. And the only issue then is the number of people who are actually in town. But that would be a form of advertising, which in a way would be superior to, not superior, but complementary to some of the big advertising, like, for example, Go Vegan World, because it'll be cheaper than that because you're obviously using the same thing over and over again. So that's an interesting one. But of course, that would need a bit of money. It goes back to if the grassroots were funded, they could think about doing that kind of thing, just notch up some aspirations a little bit, and that's one that we've got in our mind. We'd like to do,
Something practical that people can do as well. I don't know if, and this depends where you are as well, what area you're in, what country you're in perhaps, but something very practical you can do to help the other animals is get involved in transporting. So I'm in a group, and this is in London area, but I know there are other groups around the UK and perhaps in other places as well, but you can get involved in transporting sick and injured birds, for example, in my case, and there may be opportunities for other animals, but just if there are sick and injured birds that need transporting to rehabbers or to medical centres where they're going to get help, things like that, that's something quite practical. If you have the ability to be able to get around your own transport or public transport, is something that they're crying out for volunteers all the time, and that's something very, very direct and practical that you can do to help other animals.
I know here that many activists did that for stray dogs and cats, and also birds that were in trouble during the pandemic, like offering food and also taking them to the doctor and everything, which is something we can always do. And another thing that many did is that there are all these vegan kitchens and vegan groups and activists that made sure that our fellow humans that are not as privileged would have food and all the basic stuff during the pandemic. And this is also a great thing to do. And it's like staying true to the scope of veganism.
Going back to something that I just popped into my head, going back to the stickering idea. And you've always got, as Nella said, you've got this issue that the product could be withdrawn and then destroyed. At least repackaged, probably. That's going to be a waste of plastic, probably. I saw a great video that Hench Herbivore did a few years ago, and you just see him going around the supermarket and getting all the Linda McCartney pies and all the vegan stuff, and filling his trolley with it as though he was going to buy it, and then he would go to another part of the thing and start putting them on top of all the flesh products, So when so essentially that's a little bit like stickering, except that you're not actually sticking anything on anything; you're just covering it up, In I tend to do that in bookshops. You see a book that is pretty good, and you kind of put it everywhere. That kind of thing. So it's another form of advertising, I suppose.
I saw something interesting. It was actually stickering, but it made me think of an opportunity to do a kind of stickering. That was at a volunteering at a Tower Hill Sanctuary last week, and the one of the people who runs the sanctuary, they had this a wildlife plant-based spread, and on the top of it there was this. It was part of the product packaging, but it was the Bosch. I think they're called the Bosch Boys. These two influencers, and they had a link on the front packaging. There was a link to their website to discover more vegan recipes and cooking, to learn more. And I thought, I've never seen that before. I mean, that's obviously a kind of relationship they've had, but I wondered if something similar could be done, could fit in with the stickering.
Yeah, and I think Deb shared a really cool story of how an environmental group and animal rights activists have kind of worked together to push back around a local zoo, or as we may refer to as an animal prison, wanting to expand and destroy a large home for free-living ducks. So maybe another thing we could do during this time is actually reaching out and building connections with other groups, because I know that's something I think we're pretty early days with and could probably do a much better job with.
Isn't that typical that a zoo wants to expand, and in doing so they would destroy the habitats of free living beings? It's amazing, isn't it?
A lot to unpack there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Kind of goes against the whole thing of zoos being conservationists, and yeah.
I would say it was shocking, but it's not.
No, zoos are shitheads, folks. We know that.
And
Well, that's the polite term.
and lately we have all this advertising for cheaper tickets and for people to help the animals inside the zoos, like spreading the message that when you support this zoo, you support the inmates in there, not the pockets of those exploiting the animals. And the thing is that many people fell for that seat.
It's another one of those grey areas. I know that some animal rights people in the Dublin area was quite shocked at the fact that a lot of vegans were talking about helping Dublin Zoo to survive because it was threatened with closure. And so it's another one of those kind of grey areas that that people debate. Backyard eggs and riding on the backs of horses, but also what about zoos? So I think some people think of zoos as almost like akin to an animal sanctuary, and obviously that would be wrong to think that way.
Oh yeah, the word sanctuary is misused often, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, another hour's gone by quite quickly. I think we just scratched the surface on a lot of this. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. If there are any local groups, I mean, I know Tom mentioned one for setting up new street demos, but if there are things that you found useful, maybe books you've read that have been insightful during this time, we could just start a little bit of a swap for ideas to keep us evolving as advocates, even when we can't do some of the normal stuff we're used to.
There's one called The Case for Animal Rights that I seem to remember.
I can't remember who that was written by. Do you?
Yeah.
One thing that anyone that feels kind of disappointed because of the group they used to do activism with, or I don't know, their community, they can always do their own stuff. And now there are actually the resources. There are pages and people they can turn to for videos, for advice, for leaflets, for everything. So I think right now it's easier than ever to do your own thing. And we should. I mean, we should have as many groups out there doing outreach, doing stuff.
Here.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again the next time we see you. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.